Can you hear it? It's the heart. Can you feel your heart? Is it beating? Good, you're alive. You know, the heart is a really fascinating device. It beats about 70 beats per minute, every day, every week, every month, the entire life. Maybe for 100 years. And it pumps blood. Each of you have about 5 liters of blood. And the blood is a suspension of red blood cells in blood plasma. We have about 45% red blood cells and 55% blood plasma. And this is distributed in your body in the human circulatory system. And it's kind of like a road system, a logistic system. It carries vitamins, fatty acids, minerals, water, and other important building blocks to the cells of the different organs of the body. But it's also a kind of a waste system, so it will collect waste, toxic substances from the cells and carry it out of the body. And the kind of master of this, the kind of core that pumps and provides the blood to the different parts of the body is the heart. The blood. When we centrifuge the blood, the red blood cells, being heavy, will go to the bottom, the red bottom part, and the plasma will stay on top. It's mostly water. It contains proteins, vitamins like vitamin C, D, A, E, and so on, hundreds of proteins, minerals, and many, many thousand other molecules. In the red blood cells, we have fatty acids in the membrane. Inside the cell, we have hemoglobin, a protein with iron on it, and the main purpose is to transport oxygen from your lungs to the cells. And then, when it's released oxygen, it will take carbon dioxide back and release it to your breath. So, what can we learn from a blood test? Well, we can learn if the supply of nutrients in your diet is sufficient, or we can learn if you have too high glucose values, or if you have the risk of developing some diseases. But we can also learn that you already are diseased, you're sick, you need some treatment, operation, surgery, or maybe some lifestyle changes. Because we do know that lifestyle is very important for your health. And in addition to good sleep, eating healthy, exercising, and do nice things like meditate, kiss, making love, or even better, having a sip of the balance oil is really good for you. So, in addition to these things, we can also learn a lot from a blood test. And Zinzino now have 3 tests. 3 tests that can tell you things about your body, about your health, by looking at something in a drop of blood. I guess many of you have been, maybe everybody, has been to the doctor's office and taken a blood sample, and then you would know that the classical way is to stick a big needle into your arm and draw large amounts of blood into multiple tubes and look like this. But with the Zinzino test, it's very different. There is actually no big needles. It's just a tiny drop of blood. And I claim that this is about to change everything. When we take this drop of blood and dry it on a piece of paper, we refer to it as dry blood spots. And you know, there's a big difference between all these tubes of blood at the doctor's office and this small drop of blood. And often people ask me, how is it actually possible to do the analysis from such a small sample? Is it accurate? Can we trust the result? And I say, yes, you can trust the result, because even if it's only one drop of blood, it actually contains a lot of molecules. In one drop of blood, it's 10 to the 20th molecules. And this is a really huge number. It's a number with 20 zeros behind it. Do you know how large this number is? To give you an impression, consider these facts. The number of sand grains on the entire planet Earth is 10 to the 18th. The entire Earth, Sahara included. So this is 100 times less than the number of molecules in a single drop of blood. And the number of stars in the universe is 10 to the 22nd. And this is only 100 times more than the number of molecules in one single drop of blood. So we have plenty of molecules. That's not the problem. The problem is that there are 20,000 other molecules in that drop of blood. And some of them are there few of, and some of them are there really many of. So the trick here, the challenge, is to pick out the ones we want to measure and make an accurate estimate how the concentration is. So this is like finding a needle in a haystack, or actually finding a needle in 1,000 haystacks. And this is the science that Vitas master and that we offer to you. So we have 3 tests. The first test is the balance test, and this test has been around for a number of years, and many of you know it very well. So this is a test of fatty acids in the blood, in the red blood cells, in the membrane of the blood cells. And this cell is quite cool, I would say. It looks like a donut. It's because it doesn't have a core like all other cells. And the reason for this is that it's going to be very thin, and it will pass through the blood capillaries in your fingertips, for instance. And these cells, they are born in the bone marrow. Actually, the bones is an organ producing red blood cells. Like the heart is an organ, the bones are also an organ. And every second, 2 million cells are born. Think about this. 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million, 10 million cells born now, right now, in my body. And at the same time, 2 million cells die every second, so it won't fill up too much. And when the cells are born, they live for 120 days. And when you take a sip of the balance oil, you will have increasing concentration of EPA and DHA in your blood. And this blood will go into your heart, and the heart will pump this to your brain, to your liver, and to your bones. And in your bones, red blood cells are produced. So when you have high concentration of omega-3 coming into the bones, you will have newly born red blood cells with high omega-3. And at the same time, old ones die with low omega-3. And then, if you keep taking your dose of balance oil every day, you will have more and more new red blood cells with high omega-3. And in this way, the concentration in the blood will increase, the blue line. And since it takes 120 days to replace all red blood cells, this is the time where the curve flattens out. While in the blood plasma, the yellow phase that your doctor would use, there are no cells, so the concentration will only go up and down, like every day, every week. No long-term increase. So this is why a sample type containing red blood cells, like dry blood spots, is superior to the plasma for this type of analysis. So the technique we use for this analysis is called chromatography. It's a Greek word. It's a combination of chroma, meaning color, and graphy, which is writing. So it's writing in colors. And the instrumentation looks like on the picture here. It's gas chromatography. It's gas going through the system, and the result is what we call a chromatogram on the right side. And you can see there are some peaks, and each of these peaks represent a single molecule. And the height of the peak means the concentration. So a high peak is a high concentration, and a low peak is a low concentration. In real life, it looks like this. And you can see you have these blue peaks for the different fatty acids. And you see one peak for arachidonic acid, the omega-6, and then there is one for EPA, which is the omega-3. And when we calculate the arachidonic acid EPA ratio, the omega-6-3 ratio, we look at the difference in height. So you see arachidonic acid is about 5 times higher than EPA. So in this case, the ratio is 5 to 1. It's really simple. So, and the fact that this is a ratio is really important, because we don't always get perfect samples from you guys, you know? It could look like A and B with a lot of blood, or E and F with almost no blood. We actually get cards with no blood as well. Please send some blood. But if you use the whole sample, A and B, then we will have high peaks, because we have a lot of blood. And E and F, we will have very low peaks. But we do have peaks. But look at the ratio. It's always 3 to 1. So it actually doesn't matter how much blood you send us. The result will always be the same, accurate. And this is a really nice feature for home collection of blood sample, because it's less dependent on the sample quality. Then I will switch to vitamin D. And this is referred to as the sunshine vitamin. And the reason for this is that it's produced in your skin when the sun shines on it. So there are some cholesterol-like molecules that are converted by sun through several steps to the active vitamin D. So the first metabolite to be produced in the liver is 25-hydroxyvitamin D3. And this is what we measure. So this is a measure of the storage of vitamin D in your liver. So it's slowly released from the liver to the blood. And when it's kind of empty in the liver, you will have too low concentrations in your blood. And the technique we use for this is chromatography as well. Slightly different. It's not liquid, it's not gas, but it's liquid chromatography. And we use something called mass spectrometry as a detection principle. So this is a pretty sophisticated and expensive device. It's about 300,000 euros per piece. But the result is similar. It's a chromatogram with peaks representing each molecule and the concentration. And in real life, now it looks like this. It's cleaner, fewer peaks, and we can, for instance, look at vitamin D2 being in mushrooms and vitamin D3 found in the animal kingdom. This is not a relative analysis, so we are much more dependent on the sample quality. So on the right side, left side, you see a bad sample for vitamin D analysis. It's several small drops kind of painted onto the card, and it makes it possible to do 2 punches. You can see 2 holes on that card. But we actually need 3, at least 3 or 4. So we need high sample quality for you for the vitamin D analysis, like the one on the right side. So to ensure the quality of the analysis, we engage in different activities. One type of activity for this is what is called external quality assurance programs. So this, for vitamin D, is organized by a UK university. It's called DECAS. It's been there for many, many years. It's more than 1,000 labs all around the world that receives the same sample from this coordinating university. They do the analysis with their methods, instrument people. They send the results back to the coordinator. The coordinator compiles a report and issue a certificate if you are within the criteria of this program. So this is kind of the gold standard for vitamin D analysis in the world. So we have been a part of this program for many, many years, and we have always been compliant. Actually, Vitas was one of the first labs in the world to do this analysis many, many years ago. So the results are given to you in this way. You can have a green result, which means you are okay, you should continue as you do, eating fish, fatty fish, or taking the supplements you take. You could be in the low range. Having red results in the low range means that you are consuming too little, and you should increase your intake of vitamin D, either by food or the supplements, or staying in the sun, but there is a cancer risk as well involved in that. Or you can also have too high concentrations. And if you kind of reach 200, 250 of vitamin D, it starts to become toxic. Then you should stop, reduce or stop your supplements, and then take a new test in 3 months to see if you are moving down into the yellow or green range. Then, the new test, which I guess was introduced yesterday. This is very exciting. This is long-term blood sugar, or HbA1c, which is also called glycated hemoglobin. And you know, we all have been through this terrible pandemic, the COVID pandemic recently. We haven't been able to meet for a long time. It's been Zoom. And hopefully it's now over. But you know, before the COVID pandemic and during the COVID pandemic and right now and tomorrow and in the years to come, there is another pandemic. And this is the diabetes pandemic. And you know, diabetes is rising at an alarming rate in the world. It's now more than 530 million people that's been diagnosed with diabetes. This is 1 in 10 adults. And the last 2 years, it was an increase of 16%. And in some areas in the world, 2 out of 10, 20% of the population have diabetes. And diabetes is something that happens when we eat food that contains carbohydrates. This is split, metabolized into simple sugars like glucose, and the blood concentration of glucose increases. Then the body secretes insulin to help the sugar go into the cells for storage or energy. So if something, and then of course when it goes from the blood into the cells, the concentration in the blood is going down again. But if there is something wrong with this system, if it's overloaded or damaged in some way, the blood sugar will not go as effectively into the cells, and the concentration in the blood will stay high. And then it will be transported all around the body, and it starts to react with cells, with molecules like DNA, proteins, lipids, and so on, and it will render the functionality of these cells, and you will have a disease. So one example is that sugar might react with things in your eye. And this actually will cause cataract. And this is very common in dogs. You know, if you have dogs, when they get old, they usually get blind, almost blind, and they start hitting the walls and so on. And this is related to diabetes. So when your dogs start drinking water out of the water pits, you know, it's probably have diabetes because it gets thirsty, and sugar reacts with the eye, and it gets blind. And this is also the case for humans. The most important risk factor for diabetes is obesity. So if you have too high weight, the blood is less prone to go into the cells, and your blood sugar will stay high. So you can measure your blood sugar every day, and you have these white circles. It will be below or at the recommended concentration, or it could be over the recommended concentration. But if the average concentration is permanently over the recommended over time, then you have a problem. And sugar will start to react with parts of your body. So this is kind of similar to the fatty acids, you know, because when we do the fatty acid analysis, what we really would like to do is to ensure that we have enough omega-3 in your brain, for instance. Omega-3 is really important for the brain. About 60% of your fat in your brain is DHA. But we cannot take a sample from the brain, so we take a sample from the blood, and we study these cells that are fed in the same way as the brain cells, and we look at the fatty acid composition. The same is the case for glucose. We cannot study like the heart and liver and the brain, but we can take a sample from the red blood cells. And this glucose will react with the red blood cells, the hemoglobin, the red color of these red blood cells, and you have a glycated hemoglobin, being HbA1c. So we use these cells like a satellite tissue, like a model to say something about other parts of the body. And then your HbA1c will start to increase, the orange line here. So if this is getting too high, it's not good. It should be below 42 millimoles per mole. If it's between 42 and 48, you are in the risk zone, and this is called pre-diabetes. It's like the start of diabetes. So if you're in the yellow zone, try to get in the green zone. If you move up in the red zone, you need to see a doctor. It's really serious. And this you can now easily test using the Zinzino test. And I think this is a really, really important contribution to society. The test contains the same things as the other tests. The only difference is actually the color, the green color. With this test, I think you can use this to manage and control your blood sugar, and thereby avoid damage to your body, optimize your health, and improve the quality of your life. Also for this one, we need to ensure that we have the required quality, and in this case, we have collaborated with the Swedish reference lab at Sahlgrenska in Gothenburg, Sweden. And we received 264 samples, wet blood samples. We prepared the dry blood spots. We analyzed them in our lab. This is on the x-axis here, the lower one. So these are our results. And the result from the Sahlgrenska is on the y-axis going up. And if these results were identical, the blue dots will all be on the black line. They are not perfect, but you can see they are really close to the black line. And I assure you that this is extremely high quality. So our assay has diagnostic quality on dry blood spots. And another thing you need to do is to kind of follow the external quality assurance program. So this is a report from Equalis, which is also a Swedish external quality assurance program. And you can see that in the green ring there is the required inaccuracy, the maximum allowed. And in the yellow is the inaccuracy that we obtain for this single round. So it's well below what is required. And if you look at the whole of 2021, there are the last 6 rounds. There are, I think, 12 rounds. Each month we have a sample. And you can see that the required overall average error is 1.5. We have 0.75 for liquid blood and 1.10 for dry blood spots. And for 2022, the last 4 rounds, we have about half of the max error that is allowed. So it's really working. And get this to work. I'm happy to see 3 products, 3 tests now. The last time I was here, or in Globen, there was only 1 test, the balance test. Now we have 3 tests. And I think this is nice. And then, so we have balance test, we have vitamin D, we have HbA1c, and there is another one coming. I cannot tell you now, but if you come the next time, I will let you know. Okay, thank you.